Hey, what's going on? It is Monday here on ClaibsOnline.com. It's lunch with Claibs and Joe, powered by Ameren, Illinois, driven by Ncaa St. Louis Acura, and sponsored by Ryan Kelly, the home loan expert. I am Joe Roderick, joined alongside by Mike Claiborne. Claibs, what's going on?
All good. All good. Ready to get off to a roaring week. Had a great weekend of sports that was going on. You picked the sport. It was something fun about it. Well, almost. But it was a good week. I'm looking forward to this week.
We have our picks for this week, Claibs. I need you need to resend me your email that has the picks on them, so I can get your name on this list and we can figure out where you stand on it. Because as of right now, with the picks that we had in, I'm leading. I'm leading the pack once again.
Well,
I have
we know
climbed up from third back up to first. Brian Hoffman with a terrible week of picks. But the games that we had, college football, much better this weekend than the pros, with it being championship weekend. I was down in San Antonio this weekend. I ran another half marathon down there on Sunday morning, and didn't pay too close attention to the NFL, but was locked in, just kind of bar hopping down the Riverwalk on Saturday, catching as many of those games as I could that day.
All right, you ready for mine?
Yeah. What did you email
I had
me?
a terrible week. Oklahoma State, Bama,
Mm-hmm.
Cincinnati, Iowa, Bengals, Raiders.
You picked Iowa in that game?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's so you I mean you did. Yeah, we and then what were the two NFL games you picked?
Bengals
Bengals and Raiders.
Yeah.
That's not good. That's going to keep me right there in that top spot for the week. Then we'll get to those here in just a bit. But I walked into a bar right as the final play of the Oklahoma State Baylor game was happening, like right as they were breaking the huddle and going into that final play. And I tell you what, I'm looking and talking to people about this since then. I want to know what would have happened had Oklahoma State gotten those 2 extra inches and scored that touchdown on that last play. What would this Final Four have been that we're going to get if Oklahoma State would have ended up being a 12-1 team?
I don't think it would have changed much because Georgia, was number one. And I mean, they got beat handily. I don't think there's any doubt about that. Alabama's the best team right now. Cincinnati was ahead of Oklahoma State before Saturday. And you had Michigan that was ahead of Oklahoma State. So they just would have been out of luck.
I think, but they were the 5, and they beat a Baylor team, the 9th ranked Baylor team, to get in that game. If they would have won, this is again, if they would have gotten that extra, those extra few inches, and they would have scored. I think Oklahoma would have been put in there. I really think that Georgia would have been left out.
No, I don't think so. I don't think Oklahoma proved themselves enough. They were a team that teetered on disaster almost every Saturday. Georgia had one hiccup, and so I think they would have stayed in there. And, let's face it, SEC is a better brand of football, and I think that the voters considered that as well. And but I'm glad it didn't come to that. Let's just put it that way. But it would have, it would have been interesting. I don't think there's any doubt. And again, it would have proven that we need to expand the playoffs. And I get it, but how much? We can have this argument every year. There's always going to be a team that felt slighted because they didn't get in. I think it goes back to scheduling. I think you have to have a better schedule in some cases. I think Cincinnati was a team that ran the table in their conference. They had Notre Dame on the schedule. I think, had Notre Dame not been on the schedule, I'm not sure if we'd be talking about Cincinnati, even if they were undefeated. Although some would have said we got to let them in because we want to make sure it's fair and equal.
Winning that game at Notre Dame carried a lot of weight, and Notre Dame continuing on with the season they had after that loss also helped out Cincinnati a bunch too. But you still saw the committee just refusing to move Cincinnati, to give Cincinnati any kind of credit as far as where they ended up seeding them, because they're undefeated. They are the only undefeated team in college football and they're still saying, you know what? Yeah, you barely got in.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
here's the deal, though. I think their strength of schedule was weaker than the other ones, and they don't play a tougher schedule in Georgia and Alabama because they're not in the SEC. The Big Ten is superior to what conference they're in, Conference USA or whatever the hell they're in. And I think that was the difference. I just think that those other teams had played better competition.
Is it a case too of the not wanting to have Alabama and Georgia play each other again in the semifinals? I think that too. I don't think the seeds don't mean shit. I think that's I think that if Michigan would have lost to Iowa, I think Cincinnati ends up being the 2 seed instead of the 4 seed. I think they move them up to 2, and then you put Georgia 3 just so you have 2 versus 3. Because then, I mean, it doesn't matter. I mean, all that matters is who the home team is and what color jersey they're wearing. But I think that's what would have happened. So I think they sat down and they said, look, there's no way we can have Alabama and Georgia face each other in the semifinals. If they face each other in the finals, that's fine. But we can't have them in the semifinals. So you know what? Right. Just put Cincy at, And I mean, I think that's really what, and you already had Michigan at number 2, so you couldn't bump Michigan back. I think it was always going to be Cincinnati against whoever won that SEC game, and it depended on what Michigan did in theirs.
No, I think you're spot on. Now the fun begins where these teams have a whole lot of time to prepare for each other, and then you got another separate staff that's breaking down film of the other teams that could get in it. You're not only, if you're Alabama, you're already preparing for Cincinnati, but you're also preparing for both Michigan and or Georgia again. So and this is where these staffs really come into play. You have tons of people standing around that just break down film, and because the digital method of how they do it now makes it a lot easier. And you've got programs that say dial up what they do in third and short, what do they do in third and long, or second and 2. They have a scenario for everything.
Yeah.
And you can see what their tendencies are. So I've always felt that when you get in a bowl situation, you have to put in a half a dozen to 10 plays that they haven't seen, because you're going to use them at some stage of the game, be it third down, be it first down, and you got time to put it in. I mean, this isn't a situation we're preparing for next week. You have time to put in about 10 to 12 plays.
Yeah, and that's, I would have loved to see Cincinnati against Georgia, just because I think we all know what's going to happen to Cincinnati against Alabama when you give Nick Saban 3.5 weeks to prep for an opponent. I think I think that's going to be a bloodbath, and Cincinnati's going to get exposed, which college football probably wants. I don't think that. I think they want to see Cincinnati lose big so they could say, "Up, you see here, this is what happens when a Conference USA team, when we put a Conference USA team in, they get beat." So I think they want to see Alabama win big, and I think with Nick Saban getting 3.5 weeks, I think you're going to see that exact scenario happen.
And you know what, though? On the other side of that coin, Luke Fickell's got some things he can do also. Now, here's the thing about Cincinnati. They got a pair of corners that can press. They might go a little bit more man coverage, and they might try and blitz a little bit more because they've got some corners who are pretty good. Now, you might say, well, have they ever played against a Jameson Williams type player? Maybe not. But I think they're skilled individuals. And remember, Alabama's going to be without one of their other receivers. Any other program, you say, that's going to be tough. But this is Alabama. They just dust another guy off the shelf and put him in. And the next thing you know, he's a Biletnikoff candidate for next year.
You have on the other side that Michigan-Georgia game, which is going to be talked about a lot less, but could
you really think so? I think it's going to be talked about a lot because you've got two storied programs that haven't played each other recently where it had any significant meaning. I think that game is going to get more hype than the Bama-Cincinnati game.
I think the Bama versus an undefeated team is what's going to be the selling point of that one. I think that's where, I think I think Kirby Smart is going to be just kind of left out of the discussion here because everybody's going to want to talk about Jim Harbaugh and the job he did this year with that Michigan team on last year on the brink of getting fired. I mean, Jim Harbaugh probably had to go in there and convince them to keep him around for one more year after the way Michigan played last year. And maybe if it wasn't a COVID season, that he probably would have been let go. That might have saved him in the end there. So I think that Jim Harbaugh is going to get talked about a lot. I think that game, I just don't see it.
See, I'm in a different direction on this one. I think that this game has legitimate importance for both programs. Again, very successful programs. I don't think Harbaugh was as close to getting fired as you may feel. I think had he lost to Ohio State, he still would have had a job for next year. I mean, the guy moves the needle for the program. And here's the thing that I always remind people of. When you have a program, whether it's Michigan or Ohio State or Alabama or Georgia, and you get rid of a coach, who's going to come in there? Who is a guy
with the money that yeah.
I mean, and you know, I just don't think it's as easy to replace guys at this level without instant results as you may think. I think when you go, you say we're firing Harbaugh. Well, who do you have in place? Who's going to come in and coach this team up that we're going to pay $8, $9, $10 million to? I think that run of these guys who are up and comers is something we may not see as much of as we used to with regard to teams making that investment. I think they want guys who are proven. I think they want guys who they think if they can add a little bit to it are going to make the program better. And I give you a good example. When you look at Oregon, you know, they thought they were doing something once they replaced Chip Kelly. Gone through a couple of guys. It didn't work. Miami's gone through multiple guys. And all of a sudden they knock on the door of Cristobal, who is a successful coach. And I think he's going to be the reason why, you know, Miami might be back in the hunt. But I just don't think you can get guys with thin resumes. And even as I say that, Notre Dame did it with Marcus Freeman, who is 35 and was first-year defensive coordinator. You know, they tried it, but I think they had a little bit more of a support staff to go along with it. I don't think any of Kelly's coaches left with him to go to LSU. So they're rare situations, but I think it's not as easy to replace these guys as you may think, especially at that level.
All right, I missed you there. I got cut off there on my end. My internet shut down on me.
I did a 5-minute monologue. Don't worry about it.
You know what? You're the pro. You're the Hall of Famer here. I didn't think that dropping off here would have affected you in any negative way. But as I come in at the end of that, I hear you're talking about the Brian Kelly move to LSU. So if I missed any part of that, I apologize. But is that a step up in college football going from Notre Dame to LSU?
Yeah, it's the SEC. You know, we talked about this a little bit last week. You can't. You know, people expect Notre Dame to be the Lou Holtz, Jerome Bettis, Tim Brown guys. I mean, you know, the really good players of the 90s. It's not going to happen. And Notre Dame loves to use the excuse, well, you know, it's harder to get in here. Yeah, maybe it is. And if that's the case, then quit griping. Go find somewhere else to play. You know, I just don't think Notre Dame, and when they've gotten into a situation where they've gotten in the playoffs, they've been embarrassed. So there's a gap between what Notre Dame thinks they are to who they are. So I think Kelly probably figured this is as much as I can do here. Plus, when they wave $10 million in front of you. And here's the other thing that comes into play here. I don't think the Notre Dame was that upset that Brian Kelly left. You know, he's not a good person in the eyes of a lot of people. You hear stories about him all the way back to Kent State, where he was not a good person to people. And I think that kind of mantra wears on you for a while. He's been at Notre Dame over 10 years. and maybe he's worn out his welcome there.
If you were to take a job down in Louisiana, how quickly would you develop a Southern accent?
Well, when you're from Massachusetts, you're right. That's the thing about Kelly. Kelly plays to whatever crowd. If Kelly was coaching at Yeshiva, he would probably go out and have a yarmulke and be wearing one just to let them know I'm one of you guys. I'm not a big fan of how he does business, but I guess that's the way coaches recruit these days. They get what's hot and they play to the crowd. So we'll see if it works in Louisiana. I mean, that's a very talent loading state, and all the surrounding areas of the surrounding states. So he's going to be expected to compete right off the bat. He's not going to have much of a leeway. It's a very team friendly, or I say coach friendly contract that he has, and that's something that I'm a little surprised at. That they gave him everything, and he's basically there, as long as he wants to be there.
Yeah, that move, and you talk about just the situation there. Is the stories that have come out of him, at dinner at a recruit's house, taking the phone call, kind of accepting the job, going back in, finishing, stuff like that. You just hear these stories, these, I don't know, unprofessional, I guess maybe the word.
Well, what about what he did to who's the guy up in Green Bay? Matt, head coach. LaFleur and Robert Salah, who's a coach with the Jets, when they were grad assistants under him, he had them shoveling snow and parking car. That's not how you treat people, man.
But then, it goes, not only are the coaches doing this to schools, the way the schools are treating some of these coaches down in Miami, the past 48 hours or so has been an absolute mess for Manny Diaz as they sit there and they decide if they want to keep him while actively recruiting Cristobal out of Oregon. And the end of it, giving Manny Diaz, do you want to return? Do you want this? Do you want that? And then firing him, as they haven't even announced Cristobal as their head coach yet, but finally deciding to fire Manny Diaz. At some point, that's just such lack of respect for your current coach in place.
Here's what I think you have to take into account. Maybe Manny Diaz said either shit or get off the pot. Either I'm your coach or I'm not. If I'm not, then let me go. And by the way, you're going to write out a check and how you handle this. So, Diaz will end up with another job. I don't think there's any doubt. He is a good football coach. He just didn't work there. But he may have pushed the envelope and said, hey, either fire me or keep me. But I'm not going to sit here another day, just waiting for you guys to make the ink dry on this other guy's contract.
Yeah. And so he's out there. Oklahoma has kind of been jumping around a little bit as far as who they were going to hire. There were two names that have already been confirmed as their next head coach, but I haven't seen the actual Oklahoma announce who their next head coach is. Have you?
Well, I haven't seen it, but I know it's Venables. He's going to be the coach. Now, here's what I was.
Well, Dan, and that's the thing. As yesterday morning, Dan Lanning was announced as their next head coach, and now it's Venables. So,
well, you know what? Here's what's even more interesting. Having dinner with some friends the other night, I guess it was Friday night, and I'd heard it earlier today that they were talking to Dabo. They tried to make a run at Dabo, and Dabo kind of said, well, I don't know if I'm ready to go, but I got another guy you might want to talk to. Because, he felt Venables was ready to be a head coach. But so they really kind of went down there kicking the tires on one person, and it's going to be somebody else that they ended up with. And Venables is a very good coach. I think he'll do a nice job at Oklahoma. But, this whole process has changed. Do you know, with all the coaches that have put out of work, there's $94 million in payoff among 16 coaches? So that just tells you how much money's out there in this college game that we have.
That doesn't even include some of the other ridiculous stuff that's in some of these contracts. Like the Lincoln Riley contract in USC, they're paying off the house that he was trying to sell, and they're buying the house that he was building in Oklahoma. and then also giving him money to buy a new place out in LA and in Southern California. And then on top of that, the car money that he gets, I think it's $1,000 a month in a car allowance that he has there for whatever he wants to drive, and then so many uses or so many miles or hours on a private jet. It's just the money that's thrown out there is so much higher than what we're seeing in just the contracts alone.
And they don't want to pay players. Give me a
Right.
break.
Hey, speaking of paying players, before we get into the Mizzou Bowl game, one of the big NIL winners at the beginning of the season, and we're also talking Oklahoma, Spencer Rattler. Rumors of Spencer Rattler possibly being on Mizzou's radar for next season as he is in the transfer portal right now.
Okay. This situation is this situation with Missouri and his quarterback thing is kind of getting out of hand. So you make a big deal on the kid from East St. Louis and the kid from Chaminade. Then you go out and get one of the top guys in the country in Horn from Georgia. Now you want to go after Spencer Rattler. And to me, I think if there was one flaw in Eli Drinkwitz's offensive game plan was he stayed with a guy too long in Bazelak, who maybe if he's healthy, a little bit better line, maybe he'd have been a better passer. I don't know. But I think that there are guys that should be better than him within the program. Now you bring in Rattler. If you bring in Rattler, then you are definitely acknowledging that one, if not two of the quarterbacks that are still on your roster won't be back because they'll feel betrayed. So I think you got to be real careful here before you start bringing in people. And, Rattler did not have a good year when he was at Oklahoma for a lot of different reasons. I know he was highly thought of coming out of high school. But I think that in this situation, you might have to take a pass and try and develop a guy. I think if you develop a guy, that's a different story completely.
Well, the next Mizzou football game will be December 22nd. It's the Armed Forces Bowl. They'll be taking on Army in a game that the SEC told Mizzou, hey, this is you guys qualified for a bowl. This is the bowl you're going to. And a little bit of pushback from the school, according to Dave Matter and others, about the fact that bowl game is the exact same time as the bragging rights game here in St. Louis between Mizzou and Illinois in basketball. I got to be honest with you. If you're a fan of Mizzou basketball and you're upset that you have to choose between football and basketball on a night in December, you got some real big problems. They should be Mizzou should be happy. They should be thrilled that people are going to maybe not watch the bragging rights game and instead watch the bowl game. I would encourage people. I would say, hey, you know what? Hey, why don't you travel down? Why don't you take a vacation and go down there to that game? Now, the bragging rights, it's canceled this year. Now, we're not going to play it.
You know what's funny about that? Howard Richardson and I, we were supposed to go to that game. We had some really good seats. We were going to do dinner the whole 9 yards. And then when the word got out yesterday, that, hey, Missouri might be in this Army Bowl. And then we started looking at the calendar and said, oops. And I was like not upset if I didn't have to go watch Missouri because they're disappointing in a lot of different ways right now. So, yeah, I think they catch a break by not getting overexposed.
I got a big Illini fan that would be interested in taking those tickets from you if for that game on
They're on the Missouri side, so I don't know if the Illini fans are allowed on that side.
How many people in black and gold do you think are showing up to that game this year?
That's a good question.
Did you see the latest RPI rankings?
What are they, 150?
I'm going to bring this up here because I saw Dave Matter tweeting about it earlier. It is not good at all right now. Mizzou, let me find it here. This is the NCAA Net Rankings. So this is out of 358 teams?
Somewhere in that vicinity.
Mizzou is 278th. They are the lowest
on a winning streak, huh?
They are the lowest ranked team among high major conferences. Next worst team on that list is Pittsburgh at 256.
Well, this is going to be an interesting year. But, this is what happens when you try and get healthy quickly with a bunch of transfers. Remember, guys who transfer for a couple of reasons. Either they were bad guys in a bad situation, or they were guys who wanted to play and didn't feel like they had a future there. And I don't know what Council Martin has, but it's not working. The non-conference schedule was an embarrassment to begin with, and then the results that came with it just doesn't help the cause at all. And I don't know how you fix it. And you have people who want to replace him. Well, I don't know who's out there. This wasn't an attractive job, and it isn't an attractive job. And I don't know what you're going to do between now and the end of the season to fix that.
The name that's going to be out there that that Mizzou fans are going to want is going to be Kim English.
Well, what's he doing? He's lost 5 in a row or 4 in a row. This is a guy who hasn't coached enough to be in a position to take this job.
Is that going to matter, though, to fans, to boosters, when you have a former star player like Kim English who's out there?
Well, let me ask you something. Are you going to watch him because he used to play there? Do people go out to see guys who don't play anymore and coach?
At the beginning, I think people would show up just to see their former true son out there on the sidelines.
Didn't they do that already with Kim Anderson?
They did.
Okay.
Is it different? Is it different though that Kim English was a lot younger?
I don't think so. I think, and I think this has always been a Mizzou problem, and to an extent, St. Louis U. If we don't get the local guy, we have no chance. We got to give the local guy a chance. And, maybe there's some credibility to that. I just haven't seen it because the results haven't proven that. I mean, the last local guy who went to Missouri that did anything was Norm. And he didn't get to the Final Four. Mm-hmm. You look at football, you have to go back to Warren Powers, a Mizzou guy. I mean, well, not a Mizzou guy, but my point being, you want the local guy to have a shot. And, it just that doesn't always work. And especially in this day and age, because I think there are going to be some interesting coaching candidates that'll be out there if you decide to make a move.
Speaking of SLU, they lose over the weekend to UAB. Their next game is tomorrow against Belmont. Their upcoming schedule: Belmont, Boston College, Auburn, and Drake. So they are home for their next 4 games at over the No, I'm sorry. The game against Drake is a neutral site game. So they're home for the next 3 games here before the year lets out.
Well, I went Saturday night, and I had a good feeling initially, but man, SLU, there was just too many things that went wrong. Yuri Collins dribbles too much. Gibson Jimerson doesn't offer you anything. If he can't shoot from the perimeter, he had his shots, he didn't make them. He doesn't guard. You're rebounding. They got pounded on the boards. And it all kind of disintegrated in the last 5 to 8 minutes of the game. They were in pretty good shape. They played well. They got some good scoring off the bench. But, man, when UAB turned up the heat, SLU didn't have an answer. And I tell you something, these next non-conference games, they're going to have a tough time winning any one of the 3. I really do.
These are the games.
They're going to have a tough time.
I know there's the bracket buster weekend and those games later in the season, but right now for a team like SLU, 7-2 on the year, these are games they need to win in order to build that resume before they head into conference games, before they head into the Atlantic 10 conference games. So
I agree.
Yeah. By the way, I do want to point out Western Illinois won back-to-back games this weekend. Claibs, I've started looking at where all the first-round games are. Let me bring it up. I know they beat Central Michigan yesterday, and who did they knock off the day before? They went back-to-back. They beat Central Michigan 97-70 on Sunday, and on Saturday they beat Tennessee Martin 81-64. So they're just building that resume to hopefully get into that 15-14 seed range and avoid a game in Dayton, Ohio for the first 4. That's where my mindset is.
You know what my mind is set?
All those Illini fans and SLU fans out there wondering if their teams could get like a 10-11 seed and where they could fall into the tournament. I'm sitting here hoping my school can avoid that Dayton, Ohio first 4 game. That's what I'm hoping for.
I've relegated myself to following Incarnate Word basketball.
Yeah.
By the way, they played 2 games and they've given up less than 30 points in 2 games.
Is that?
Think about what I just said. They beat somebody they beat Villa Duchesne by 81 points the other night.
Jesus, God.
Yeah, the same night that the Grizzlies won by 73, Incarnate won by 81.
That's you're bringing freshmen out of the stands who are just there watching the game, and you're saying, "Hey, go down and suit up. You're going to play the fourth quarter today."
That's what it comes down to. That's how good they are.
God. A lot of college talk here. If you're looking for more SLU talk, Bob Ramsey and Matt Rocchio every Tuesday and Thursday with the 2-man game. They'll be bringing you that tomorrow and later on this week as they will cover the entire SLU schedule. They'll be looking at that UAB game too. Matt Rocchio, he's watching film on these games to break it down with Rammer, who's got a front row seat for every single Billikens game. So if you are a fan of Billikens basketball or just basketball in general, make sure to check out 2-man game right here on claibsonline.com. We will take a break when we come back. Big news out of the Major League Baseball Hall of Fame. Also, we get to we haven't talked do that and show you the standings and our picks right here on Lunch with Claibs and Joe, powered by Ameren, Illinois, driven by Ncaa St. Louis, sponsored by Ryan Kelly, the home loan expert.
At St. Louis Acura and Alden Toyota, we are proud of our dedication to service, and we continue to serve our community. From now until December 12th, bring a new unwrapped toy from Marine Corps Reserve, Toys for Tots, to support 323 Marines who in 2020 collected toys for over 78,000 children. Drop off at either St. Louis Acura or Alden Toyota. St. Louis Acura and Alden Toyota, becoming better than ever for you.
Back here, it's Lunch with Claibs and Joe here on claibsonline.com. Hey, this past weekend, I had Howard Balzer on my show. We talked a little NFL through week 12 and also talked about the St. Louis and the Rams lawsuit that was settled right before Thanksgiving. So you can go check that out over at the on the Weekend Joe page in the podcast, and also go to YouTube and you can see my interview with Howard Balzer there if you want the video side of things. So week 13 in the books. Biggest story from week 13, Claibs. The Lions finally win a game, and they did it on a buzzer beater touchdown as time expired. So the Lions get their first win. We will have I guess they had already tied a game this year, so they will not be 0-16-1 as the season ends.
They'll be in a good position to have a very good player out of college again. And congratulations to Brad Holmes, who started his pro football career here in St. Louis with the Rams. He worked in the PR department and then moved over on the operations side and went out to LA with the Rams and has done a nice job in developing some people out there. And now he's a general manager of Detroit. So I'm happy for him, but they got a lot of work to do. But they play hard. Let me ask you this question. I talked to Frank this morning. I asked him this question. Who's the worst team in the NFL right now? I mean, we always talk about the best team. Who's the worst team right now that just you see no future?
So it's between Jacksonville and it's between the Lions.
Well, now remember, I said no future. I think most people think they have a future because at least they have a quarterback.
Jacksonville?
Yeah.
What has Trevor Lawrence done this year?
Well, again, I think his potential gives him a better chance than what you see with some other teams. And I look at this whole Jets first round pick. This isn't working. Fields is hurt, but I think he's got some people around him that aren't very good, and I'll start with the coaching staff. Then you have Detroit, as you just mentioned. The the Giants are really challenging for this role as well. There's some teams out there that they don't seem like they have a direction that's taking them in a good spot.
I'll tell you one team that keeps shooting themselves in the foot are the Eagles.
Or the Bengals?
The Eagles, just because they keep winning games when they have 3 first-round picks right now going into this year. So they keep winning, and they're just hurting one of those first 3 picks. They're not going anywhere, and they're 6-7. They're not going to make the playoffs.
Well, but let me ask you this. You got 3 picks. Do you want to use them all, or do you want to trade one to get more picks, or get a player that can help you right off the hop, or get a couple of players that can help you off the hop? Because you got to remember something. You got a cap issue you got to be careful of here too.
So, yeah, you'd want those 3 picks then to keep those guys under the cap, right?
No, what I'm saying is, if there is what do you think their biggest need is right now?
The Eagles' biggest need? I mean, I'm gonna probably that offensive line for them is probably getting a little old, so they're gonna want to upgrade that.
So why
you're saying saying address that in free agency or trades?
Perhaps, yeah, perhaps. And you can take one of those picks and trade for 2, and that way you get yourself some extra players, and you make a free agent signing that helps you in the offensive line. I mean, I think the Eagles are in a great position. So a draft spot, remember, they've got somebody else's pick. So I think the key is, what are those other teams doing as far as the draft is concerned, where their standings are?
So you tell me who you think the worst team in the NFL is.
I think it's the Bears. I just don't. I watched them for a while yesterday, and they just seem. And granted, they don't have Fields. Their running game is mediocre. The passing game is even worse. Your offensive line can't do anything. Your defense is beat up. But I just don't see where they're improving offensively. Matt Nagy has not done it much to impress me.
So, but when we say this, so when you asked me worst team, I went Lions and Jacksonville, who both have questionable head coaches. And I think as far as the quarterback
position goes, you have first-year head coaches in both those guys too.
You do. But and in both cases, I think it should probably both be one and done. But I think the Lions quarterback situation is a lot more questionable than Jacksonville. You do give Trevor Lawrence another year or 2 to figure it out. But in the Bears case, is that more front office and coaching than it is the players on the field? Because
I think it's a combination.
Justin Fields he's been toyed with this year. From the beginning of the year, going with Andy Dalton over him, then you put him in there and he gets hurt. And Montgomery being hurt for a while. I couldn't tell you one wide receiver that the Bears have. So I don't know who Justin Fields is throwing that football to this year. But they do have good players on defense. But it seems like every move, Matt Nagy has proven he's not a good head coach, and Ryan Pace is not a good GM at all.
Yeah, that's why I just think now these days, with the lack of patience that we show with assistant coaches, we saw an offensive coordinator get fired yesterday. I think that the people who do the hiring, be it the GMs, probably need to be held more accountable than what they used to be. You start firing if you don't get it right after your second head coach, you don't get a chance to make a third choice.
Right.
So I'm not 100%. I'm not sold on that. So, but I don't want to take away from this though. I thought, and you touched on the Detroit game, I thought the endings of games we had with San Francisco, the Seattle game last night, and there was some other thrillers down the stretch. Pittsburgh, those are the games that I thought were fun. And I know some people were questioning Harbaugh's decision to go for it too. And he said, hey, look, I'm out of cornerbacks. I don't have any cornerbacks. If we go into overtime, it'll be over with in 2 plays. But I love those guys who have that sort of job security where they can pull that off. And those are the things that makes the NFL fun compared to the college game, which has been terrific this year in a lot of different levels. Not as consistent as I thought it would be, because I don't think the teams are as good, but at least they're all the same.
Tonight we have probably the best Monday Night Football game of the season, most anticipated Monday Night Football game of the season, as it's the Bills against the Patriots. And not only do we have that game tonight, we also get the Manning cast on the as well.
Who do we have as far as their guest tonight?
Only person they have announced so far is David Letterman.
Okay. I'm trying to get the weather on what's going to look like in Buffalo tonight, so give me a second here.
It is going to be windy. That's all it says here.
Well, it's always windy in Buffalo.
Yeah,
though.
that's all my app says. It gives no temperature. It just says windy.
Well, the weather's going to be in the mid-30s, and as you mentioned, the wind's supposed to be as much as 27 to 28 miles per hour. I don't know if you've ever been in that stadium before, but it's always
I've never been to
kind of
Buffalo
like
before.
Well, you haven't missed much. I'll just tell you that now. They got a nice little restaurant right there.
I can get wings. I can get wings down the street from me here in Belleville. I don't think I need to go to Buffalo for that.
No, they don't have a lot going for it. But the thing is, it's kind of like Arrowhead, where the wind's always swirling, and it's a kicker's nightmare. But they'll get a good crowd. I give them credit for that. They want a new stadium, and they probably need a new one. How they're going to build it, who knows? But yeah, you're right. You said maybe the best matchup we've had so far this year.
So I don't know if they're planning on having Letterman on for a long time, because that is the only thing that they have promoted so far is David Letterman. So
well, that's probably somebody that they confirm way out, and
Yeah.
probably want to have the other ones as a surprise, and I don't know how they booked that thing. But they probably might want to have some current event people or something, that someone is close by that's involved in the game today. So we'll see.
I mean, if you're doing, Bills, Patriots, they've already had Julian Edelman on. I don't know what Patriots they would go to that have a relationship. I do enjoy watching that. I mean, just the ins and the outs of it. But whenever they have a former Patriot on, and they've had a lot of them this year, they've had Brady, they've had Gronkowski, they have Edelman. Eli Manning just enjoys the hell out of himself when he has a former Patriot on, because it's a good chance that former Patriot was beaten in the Super Bowl by Eli Manning. And Eli knows that and loves to bring it up. So just watching him do that, as and Peyton had legendary battles with the Patriots his entire career, with both the Broncos and the Colts. And it was, win-loss back and forth. But Eli just had those 2 wins against the Patriots in the game that mattered the most. And you can tell that he really, really loves bringing it up to them, no matter what the circumstance is.
You know who I tell you who would be a good guess is Nick Saban.
Does Nick Saban do that does Nick Saban take 30 minutes out of his prep work for Cincinnati to go on that?
It's the best recruiting vehicle he could have. Remember, he's recruiting their nephew. Remember, he's got the national stage to himself. He knows Belichick as well as anybody. His quarterback, Mac Jones, is there. And if it wasn't for Saban, Mac Jones would have never been drafted by by New England. So I think you could do that. On the other side of the coin, who you could have on from Buffalo, that would be interesting. Obviously the obvious choice would be Jim Kelly. I don't know what his health is like at this point, but they'll come up with something that'll keep us interested.
You know what? Here you go. Here's one. Drew Bledsoe.
Not a bad call. Yeah.
That would former Patriot, former Bill quarterback. The 3 of them sitting there talking quarterback play with 2 young quarterbacks on the TV for an entire quarter. That would be a really good one for tonight.
Well, he's making a small fortune in the wine business these days. So you can get him to put a glass down. Maybe you can get him on. He's doing really well in the wine business.
I had no idea. Better than Vermeil.
Light years better than Vermeil.
Hey, so that's on tonight. Here you go. Here's our standings right now for the picks. As I had a very good weekend of games. I was the only person that picked the Chargers to beat the Bengals this weekend. So I got my one of my points there. I also went with Baylor and Cincinnati, and I got the Washington football team pick right. So I went 5-2, or 4-2 in my picks this weekend to move ahead on the standings there. As Claibs, you have now fallen back into a what is that? A 4-way tie for third place.
4-way tie.
Look at Andy Hanselman just climbing up into third place there on the standings, and then
apparently Ben is playing for next year's draft.
I was going to say Ben's been out of the country, and I don't know if he's even knows what games he's picking.
It wouldn't have made a difference.
Yeah, it's we're about to just take him off the list there with the picks that he's been.
So you're gonna do him like they do the guy when you're in Double Jeopardy and you're in the red. They don't let you come out for Final Jeopardy.
It's getting to be that point, as we'll have to figure out what to do in bowl season with some of the games coming up over the next few weeks. Hey, final break here. When we come back, we will get to that baseball Hall of Fame talk. I know you'll have a lot to say about that here on Lunch with Claibs and Joe, powered by Ameren, Illinois, driven by Ncaa St. Louis Acura, and sponsored by Ryan Kelly, the home loan expert.
Every day, Ameren, Illinois works to deliver reliable energy throughout the state to on-the-go families, in-the-know grandparents, and busy students. But did you know we also have ways to manage your energy? Paperless billing, outage notifications, pick a due date, auto pay, and so much more. So no matter who you are or how you use your energy, there's an option that's right for you. Learn more at amerenillinois.com/options.
So Major League Baseball, or I should say the Baseball Hall of Fame, announced yesterday the new candidates for the new inductees for 2022. This is before the media votes come in here in a few weeks, but it is going to be Gil Hodges, Jim Kaat, Minnie Minoso, Tony Oliva, and Buck O'Neil, all newest members of baseball's Hall of Fame. Claib's favorite of yours, Dick Allen, was missed by just one vote.
Yeah, he and Kenny Boyer, two guys that I'm hoping to see go in, but I got no beef with the ones who went in. I didn't see Minnie Minoso play. I've heard a lot of great things about him. Tony Oliva played in the American League, where we just didn't see a lot of them, especially because he was in Minnesota. But everyone who saw more of him than I did told me that he could play with anybody. So kudos to him. And as far as Buck O'Neil's concerned, knowing him and most people already thought he was in.
I was shocked when I saw his name on the list.
He was such an advocate for so many other Negro League players, but he forgot himself. A wonderful man, just an incredible ambassador. And I know his family's got to be tickled pink, and all the folks over in Kansas City, I know are ecstatic by him going in. They had a little gathering at the Hall of Fame there last night when the announcement was made. And I know there are a lot of people, including my good buddy Bob Hendrick, who's been a big advocate for Buck, and I'm glad he's going in. I mean, yeah, if you were ever around him, you just say, man, we had more people like this in the world, we wouldn't have the issues we have in the world. And when you think about everything he's done in baseball, incredible scout. He signed 3 Hall of Famers in Billy Williams, Lee Smith, and Bruce Sutter. Oh, wait a minute. It was Williams, Smith, maybe it's Ferguson Jenkins. But anyway, he's got 3 Hall of Famers that he signed as a scout. But just as a person, man, you would not meet a better person. Impeccably dressed all the time. He had hands the size of this computer screen. I mean, just a massive guy, but a wonderful person, and I couldn't be happier for him.
So that as you've seen some of the other votes coming in for the baseball writers for that class, I know we find that out in January. Have you looked at it? Have you followed that at all to kind of see what Scott Rowland's chances are of making it?
I think Rowland's chances are pretty good. I think we talked about this a couple of weeks ago. I'm an Andrew Jones guy. I think he should be in. There's some other guy, Omar Vizquel should be in. And then after that, you deal with the juicers or the alleged juicers and the guys who had their issues with the game, that group. And I believe, 3 of them come off after this year, which is fine with me, because I wouldn't have voted for them anyway. So it's not what I call a deep class, but there's some quality candidates out there.
I meant to bring this up earlier as we wind down the show today. The SLU soccer, when we were talking SLU basketball, I wanted to bring up the SLU soccer team as they lose to Washington in the quarterfinals this past weekend. Game that people had issues streaming the game through Washington's website, and then when they finally were able to stream the game and see the field there, I don't know if there's many local high schools that would have been willing to play a game on a field that looked as terrible as that.
Yeah, I agree. And I really blame the NCAA for not making this game available on their site instead of leaving it up to a university. And I'm sure the folks in Washington were doing the best they could. But the NCAA, with all of its TV connections, should have made that game available on one of their outlets. The field conditions, you remember, this is Seattle, where it's going to be a little damp. But man, and I'm not saying that was a reason why SLU lost. It just didn't have a good look from where we sat. And Seattle or Washington took advantage of it. Good for them. Good luck to them in the next round. As far as St. Louis U's concerned, they gave us everything we'd hoped for this year. And they got a lot of guys coming back. And now they've had a taste of it, and they'll get some help. They'll even be more interesting to watch.
So I meant to bring that up earlier. I apologize to the SLU fans out there for making it seem like we just waited till the very end to bring it up. Claibs, next Monday, we will be out at Munganass Alton Toyota. The last time that we will be out at Munganass here in 2021. I will also be giving away two tickets to the WWE Royal Rumble out there at Munganass next week. We will post those details on our social media pages and let you know how you can win a pair of tickets to the Royal Rumble. Unfortunately, Claibs, you will be out of town when the Royal Rumble is here in town on January 29th at the Dome. But because I know there are a few people I'm going with to that we're really looking forward to you possibly joining us, but you'll already be down in Florida.
I will unfortunately be. I think I'm on a cruise then.
Probably, yeah.
So
I think that's when that. Yeah,
maybe I'll try and stream it while I'm on the cruise. What do you think?
That's it. It'll be available on Peacock, and you'll be able to do that.
I have Peacock.
And then on top of that, it was just announced this past weekend to Claibs, and I'm going to get the live read. I'm going to get the script so you can do a live read for this next week from our good friend Dave Green, who is working with Conrad Thompson and his podcast Empire right now. But Conrad Thompson is going to be bringing a live podcast with Jeff Jarrett and Eric Bischoff to the South Broadway Athletic Club. I imagine by the time we do this show next Monday, those tickets will be sold out, but I'm still having Dave Green send a script over for you to do a live.
I'd be more than happy to do it. I'll be more than happy to do it. Dave Green's my guy. And, the wrestling thing, I think the wrestling, it's so traditional where every generation has their favorites. And then when they grow out of it, they just kind of shrug their shoulders and say, he wasn't as good as Dick the Bruiser, or he wasn't this, or, it just goes in cycles. But you know what? It doesn't go away. They just find new fans.
And I've had somebody reach out to me and they say they want you to interview Eric Bischoff before they come into town for this, just to talk about the business aspect of wrestling.
I'd love to do it.
They think that would be a very fascinating conversation to hear you and him talk about that.
I'm in.
I will work on setting that up for you, for all of us here at claibsonline.com. What do you have lined up for this week?
Well, I'm going to see some NBA this week. Dallas and Lakers in Memphis for a couple of games. And I'm going to do that. And we've got Gary Pinkel with Huddle Up with Howard. I want to remind everybody about that. That was a fun visit that we had with him. And Alex Ferrario will visit with on Wednesday after the Blues play tomorrow night and get his thoughts on where the Blues are headed. Man, what a tough and awkward season they're dealing with injury, COVID, roster situations, cap hits. I mean, it's been tough. They've been able to manage, and then they just find a way not to be able to hold on late, and that's something that drives any coach crazy.
Yeah, so you and Alex should have a lot to talk about with your show coming up this week. Also, as you mentioned, the NBA 2-man game this week, Tuesday and Friday. They do it twice a week here on Claibs Online. Claibs, we will talk to you next Monday. We will be out at Munganass Alton Toyota. We'll see Jamie out there as for one more show out there here in 2021. For Mike Claiborne, I am Joe Roderick. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon, as this has been another episode of Lunch with Claibs and Joe, powered by Ameren, Illinois, driven by Munganass St. Louis Acura, and sponsored by this man. It's Ryan Kelly.
You know, the only thing faster than this supersonic golf cart are the closing times at thehomeloanexpert.com. Mortgage rates are in the twos, and we have a 21-day closing guarantee. Apply online today at thehomeloanexpert.com.